What happens when two strangers are thrown together in a marriage neither wanted, trapped by lies, manipulation, and broken promises? This isn't just survival. This is about two souls fighting against a world designed to keep them apart. Stick around until the end. You won't believe how this story unfolds. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what you think about arranged marriages. Montana Territory, 1875. Sarah Blackwood stepped off that dusty stagecoach with trembling hands and a racing heart. 22 years old, honey blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and absolutely nowhere to go. The driver dumped her single trunk in the dirt and pointed toward a ridge. Settlements that way. Someone's waiting. But Sarah knew the truth. No one was waiting for her. They were waiting for cargo. Human cargo. 3 months earlier, her gambling addict father had lost everything in a poker game. Cards, whiskey, desperation. And then came the final bet. The one that destroyed her life. Her father had wagered her. Sarah's hand in marriage to a Blackfeet warrior named Swift Arrow, the adoptive son of the man who'd cleaned him out. A traitor named Thornton. And now here she was, middle of nowhere, about to marry a complete stranger. A bearded man rode up on horseback, leading another horse behind him. "Name's Holloway. Thornton sent me to fetch you." His tone was flat, businesslike, like he was picking up a shipment of flour. "There must be some mistake," Sarah said, her voice barely steady. "My father had no right—" "Your father signed papers, legal and binding." Holloway's expression softened just slightly. "Look, I know this ain't ideal, but you got nowhere else to go, do you?" Sarah's jaw tightened. He was right. Her father had fled St. Louis, leaving her with nothing. No money, no family willing to take her in. Just this arrangement. A prison sentence disguised as marriage. But she didn't know yet just how much of a prison it really was. They rode in silence toward the settlement. When they crested the ridge, Sarah saw it for the first time. A blend of traditional teepees and rough wooden structures. People moved through the camp in a mix of native dress and Western clothing. Eyes turned toward her as they rode in. Curious, suspicious, cold. Outside the largest building stood 3 men. An elderly Blackfeet chief with a face like carved stone. A well-dressed white man, Thornton no doubt, and a younger native man whose rigid posture and icy glare made Sarah's stomach drop. Swift Arrow. Thornton stepped forward with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome, Miss Blackwood. Your journey has been long." "Where is my father?" Sarah demanded. "Haven't seen him since St. Louis," Thornton said smoothly. "But rest assured, our arrangement is both legal and beneficial. You'll be well cared for." Swift Arrow's dark eyes locked onto Sarah's. "I did not ask for a white woman," he said, his English crisp and cutting. "This is your scheme, Thornton, not mine." "Now, son," Thornton began. "I am not your son." Swift Arrow's voice was pure venom. "You raised me after my parents died, but you do not command my heart." He turned to the chief. "Grandfather, this dishonors our ways." Chief Many Horses raised a weathered hand. "The council has decided, Swift Arrow. Our alliance with Thornton's trading company brings supplies we need to survive. This marriage strengthens that bond." Sarah stood frozen, humiliation burning through her veins. Bad enough to be bartered like livestock. But to be so openly rejected by the man she was supposed to marry? That was something else entirely. "The ceremony will take place tomorrow," Thornton announced with satisfaction. "Miss Blackwood will stay with Morning Dove tonight." A middle-aged woman with kind eyes stepped forward. "Come, daughter, you must be tired." As Morning Dove led her away, Sarah heard Swift Arrow's final words to Thornton. "You may force this marriage, but you cannot force me to accept her as a true wife." And just like that, Sarah understood. This wasn't just an arranged marriage. This was war. That night, in Morning Dove's teepee, Sarah fought back tears as the older woman helped her unpack. "He is angry now," Morning Dove said gently, "but Swift Arrow is a good man. His heart is wounded from many betrayals. I don't want to marry someone who hates me, Sarah whispered. Morning Dove patted her hand. Sometimes the path we must walk is not the one we would choose, but every journey reveals its purpose in time. Then she added something that changed everything. Swift Arrow's parents were killed by white settlers when he was a child. Thornton found him and raised him between two worlds. He trusts neither fully now. Sarah lay awake all night, staring at shadows dancing across the teepee walls. She was about to marry a man who blamed her entire race for destroying his life. What could possibly go wrong? The ceremony the next day was brief and cold. Swift Arrow stood rigid beside her, speaking the required words like they were nails being hammered into a coffin. Sarah felt hollow inside, a chess piece in someone else's game. Afterward, Thornton hosted a celebration, clearly pleased with himself. He pulled Sarah aside during the festivities. "You've done well, my dear. This union secures my trading rights with the tribe for years to come." "I am not your dear," Sarah replied coldly. "And I didn't do this for you." Thornton laughed. "Spirited. Perfect. You'll need that fire to win over your husband." "Why did you choose me for this?" Sarah demanded. His smile faded. "Your father was desperate enough to agree to anything, and Swift Arrow needs someone to civilize him a bit. He straddles two worlds, but belongs to neither. You're my insurance that he'll continue helping me navigate tribal politics." The truth hit Sarah like a slap. She wasn't a wife. She was a leash. That night, Sarah was led to Swift Arrow's cabin at the edge of the settlement. Inside was sparse, a mix of native crafts and Western items. Two worlds colliding, just like its owner. Swift Arrow entered behind her and closed the door firmly. "There is food if you're hungry," he said flatly. "You will sleep there." He pointed to a pallet across the room from his own bed, as far away as possible. "We are married now," Sarah said quietly. "Shouldn't we at least try to—" "We are married by paper and ceremony only," Swift Arrow interrupted. "Nothing more. I did not choose you, and you did not choose me. We are both Thornton's pawns." Sarah straightened her shoulders, anger replacing humiliation. "I may not have chosen these circumstances, but I choose how I face them. I will not spend my life being resented for something I didn't control." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. Then his expression hardened again. "Get some rest. Tomorrow you will begin to earn your keep here." Sarah lay on her lonely pallet that night and made a silent vow. She would not be broken by this. Somehow she would forge a life here, with or without her husband's acceptance, but she had no idea just how complicated things were about to get. Dawn came cold and clear. The cabin was empty. Swift Arrow had already left. Sarah dressed quickly, determined to face whatever this day might bring. Outside, the settlement buzzed with activity. Children played. Women worked at cooking fires. Men prepared for hunting. Sarah stood awkwardly, lost in this unfamiliar world. "You look lost, daughter," came Morning Dove's warm voice. "Come, I will show you what needs doing." Over the next hours, Morning Dove taught Sarah the basics of camp life. How to tend the fire, where to gather water, which plants could be used for medicine and food. "Swift Arrow is a respected warrior and hunter," Morning Dove explained. "He also serves as translator when traders or government officials visit. His place in our tribe is important but complicated." "Because of Thornton," Sarah said. Morning Dove nodded. "Thornton gave him education, taught him the white man's ways, but also kept him separate from both worlds. He uses Swift Arrow's skills for his business dealings." "And now he's using our marriage the same way," Sarah murmured bitterly. By late afternoon, Sarah returned to the cabin to prepare an evening meal. She used the skills Morning Dove had taught her, determined to at least prove her willingness to fulfill her duties as a wife, even if only in name. Swift Arrow returned at dusk. Surprise crossed his features at the sight of the prepared meal. He sat without comment and began to eat. "Is it acceptable?" Sarah ventured after several minutes of silence. "It will do," he replied flatly, though she noticed he ate heartily. "I met some of the women today," she said. attempting conversation. They were kind enough to teach me things. Swift Arrow looked at her properly for the first time. Why are you trying so hard? You did not choose this life. Neither did you, Sarah said. But here we are, and I refuse to spend my days in misery and resentment. I may not have chosen you, but I can choose to make a life here. A temporary life, Swift Arrow corrected. Thornton will eventually tire of this game. Is that what you want? Sarah challenged. To wait until he decides our fates again? Swift Arrow's expression darkened. What I want has never mattered to him. It matters to me, Sarah said quietly. What do you want, Swift Arrow? The question seemed to startle him. He stared at her for a long moment, then rose abruptly. I'm going to the council meeting. Don't wait up. Sarah sat alone in the cabin as darkness fell, wondering if she'd just made things better or worse. She was about to find out. Days fell into a routine. Sarah worked diligently to learn tribal ways, earning gradual acceptance from the women. Swift Arrow remained distant but civil. Their interactions were limited to necessary conversations. But something was shifting beneath the surface. Sarah could feel it. One evening, nearly a month after her arrival, Sarah returned to find Swift Arrow preparing to leave, dressed in his finest clothes. There's a tribal gathering tonight, he explained briefly. I will be late. May I come? Sarah asked impulsively. Swift Arrow frowned. It is not for outsiders. I am your wife, she replied with quiet dignity. How can I ever be anything but an outsider if I'm not allowed to participate in tribal life? Something in her words resonated. After a long pause, he nodded curtly. Change into the buckskin dress and follow my lead. The gathering took place around a central fire. Drums beat a hypnotic rhythm as dancers moved in intricate patterns. Sarah sat quietly beside Swift Arrow, determined to show respect. The dancers tell the story of our people's creation, Swift Arrow explained unexpectedly, leaning close. How Old Man created the animals and the Blackfeet from mud by the river. Sarah listened intently as he continued translating songs and explaining cultural elements throughout the evening. It was the most he'd ever spoken to her. She treasured this small opening. As they walked back under the brilliant night sky, Sarah gathered her courage. Thank you for allowing me to attend tonight. And for explaining the ceremonies. Swift Arrow was quiet for several steps. You showed respect. That is unexpected. Why? Because I'm white? Sarah challenged gently. Because you're here against your will, he corrected. I expected anger, tears, demands to be returned to your people. I have nowhere to return to, Sarah admitted. My father gambled away everything, including our home. He abandoned me to this fate. They reached their cabin. In the moonlight, Sarah saw something soften in Swift Arrow's expression. We have that in common then, he said quietly. Being abandoned by those who should have protected us. The next morning, Sarah woke to find a small leather-bound book beside her pallet. A collection of Blackfeet stories and customs written in English. When she looked questioningly at Swift Arrow, he simply said, If you wish to understand, you should start there. Something had changed. Small gestures marked their interactions now. Brief explanations of customs, occasional conversations over meals, a growing mutual respect that, while fragile, offered hope. But hope is a dangerous thing, especially when men like Thornton are involved. Thornton made his first visit since the wedding unannounced one afternoon while Swift Arrow was away hunting. He swaggered into the cabin where Sarah was mending clothes. Well, well, he said, looking around. Playing the dutiful Indian wife, I see. How charming. Sarah stood, keeping the table between them. What do you want, Mr. Thornton? Just checking on my investment. He smiled coldly. Tell me, has my wild Indian boy been properly tamed by his white bride yet? Swift Arrow is a man of honor and dignity, Sarah replied evenly. Not a boy to be tamed. Thornton's smile vanished. Don't get ideas above your station, girl. You're here to serve a purpose, keeping him loyal to me. And if I fail in this purpose, Sarah challenged, then you're of no use to me, are you? Thornton's implication was crystal clear. Remember your circumstances. Without this arrangement, you have nothing and no one. When Swift Arrow returned that evening, Sarah debated whether to tell him about the visit, but her husband sensed her unease immediately. What happened? He asked, setting down his hunting gear. Sarah recounted the conversation honestly. Swift Arrow's expression darkened with each word. He threatens you to control me, he said finally, anger barely controlled in his voice. Always, he finds new chains. What hold does he truly have over you? Sarah asked carefully. Swift Arrow paced the small cabin. Legal guardianship until recently, now trade agreements the tribe depends upon, and knowledge of things from my past. What things? He stopped pacing, conflict clear in his expression. It does not concern you. It does if he's using it to threaten both our futures, Sarah insisted. Their eyes locked in silent battle. Finally, Swift Arrow relented. When I was 16, there was trouble with white settlers hunting on tribal lands. A man was shot. Thornton claimed he protected me from being blamed, though I never knew if that was truth or manipulation. Sarah moved closer, stopping just short of touching him. He uses fear to control you, just as he uses my vulnerability to control me. We are both his prisoners unless we find a way to break free. For the first time, Swift Arrow looked at her not as an unwanted obligation, but as a potential ally. Perhaps, he said thoughtfully, but challenging Thornton is dangerous. For now, we must appear to play his game. That night, Swift Arrow moved his bedding slightly closer to Sarah's pallet, not joining her, but symbolically reducing the distance between them. It was a small gesture, but to Sarah, it felt like the first bridge across the chasm separating them, and neither of them knew it yet. But that bridge was about to be tested in ways they couldn't imagine. Winter descended on the valley overnight. The first snow transformed the landscape into a gleaming white expanse that took Sarah's breath away. Life in the settlement changed with the season. Hunting parties ventured farther. Women worked industriously preparing hides and preserving food. Evenings filled with storytelling and communal gathering spaces. To Sarah's surprise, Swift Arrow had begun including her more. He no longer objected when she joined the women for daily work. Occasionally he invited her to ceremonies, and in the evenings, he started teaching her basic Blackfeet phrases. Your pronunciation is improving, he commented one night as they sat before the fire, wind howling outside their snug cabin. Sarah smiled, pleased by the rare compliment. I want to understand your people better. Our people, Swift Arrow corrected, then looked surprised at his own words. The moment hung between them, delicate and significant. Sarah busied herself with mending to hide the flush rising to her cheeks. There is a winter ceremony tomorrow, Swift Arrow said after a pause. The women have prepared special foods and gifts. Will you come? I'd like that very much, Sarah replied, trying to contain her excitement. The winter ceremony was elaborate. The entire tribe assembled in the largest lodge, where elders recounted sacred stories and performed rituals to ensure survival through harsh months ahead. Sarah sat beside Swift Arrow, acutely aware of his presence. When food was distributed, he quietly explained the significance of each ceremonial dish. During one solemn prayer, his hand accidentally brushed against hers. Neither pulled away for several heartbeats. Later, gifts were exchanged among families. To Sarah's astonishment, Swift Arrow presented her with a beautifully crafted pair of beaded moccasins. Winter is harsh here, he explained, a hint of awkwardness in his usually confident demeanor. Your boots are not suited for deep snow. Thank you, Sarah whispered, touching the intricate beadwork. They're beautiful. Mourning Dove, watching nearby, gave Sarah a knowing smile that made her blush. As they walked home through moonlit snow, comfortable silence between them, Sarah realized something fundamental had shifted. The arrangement that began as a prison was evolving into something neither had anticipated. That night, Swift Arrow spoke of his childhood, before Thornton, memories of his parents, early years with the tribe. Sarah shared stories of her mother, who died when she was young, and her complicated relationship with her gambling father. In those quiet hours, They discovered unexpected commonalities in their experiences of loss and displacement. The following weeks brought them closer still. Swift Arrow began teaching Sarah to track and hunt small game, skills that surprised and impressed the tribal women. In return, she taught him songs and stories from her childhood, their evenings filled with conversation rather than silence. "You are different from what I expected," Swift Arrow admitted one night as they shared tea by the fire. "As are you," Sarah replied. "I thought all Indians were savages, as the newspapers claim. I was taught to fear your people." Swift Arrow's expression turned serious. "And I was taught that white women were weak and useless on the frontier. We were both fed lies to keep us separate." "And yet here we are," Sarah said softly. His dark eyes held hers. "Here we are." Their first real kiss came unexpectedly during a hunting expedition. Swift Arrow was demonstrating how to reset a triggered rabbit snare when Sarah slipped on ice and fell against him. His arms closed around her instinctively. For a breathless moment they stood frozen, faces inches apart. Then, with gentle hesitation, Swift Arrow lowered his head and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was tender, questioning, and over almost before it began. He stepped back, uncertainty in his eyes. "I should not have—" Sarah reached for his hand. "But I wanted you to." They returned to the cabin hand in hand, something new and fragile blossoming between them. That night, Swift Arrow moved his bedding beside Sarah's. Though they did nothing more than hold each other, both recognized a boundary had been crossed. They were no longer merely enduring an arranged marriage. They were choosing each other despite the circumstances that brought them together. As winter deepened, their bond strengthened. Swift Arrow brought Sarah small gifts: a pretty stone, feathers for her hair, a wooden comb he carved himself. She embroidered designs on his hunting shirts and learned to prepare his favorite foods. The cabin that once felt like a prison became a sanctuary where they created their own blended traditions. But not everyone was happy about it. "Not everyone is happy about us," Sarah observed one evening after receiving cold treatment from several tribal members. Swift Arrow nodded gravely. "Some fear you will take me away from our ways. Others worry your presence will bring more white settlers." "And what do you fear?" Sarah asked quietly. He was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he took her hand. "I fear Thornton's reaction when he realizes we no longer play by his rules." The mention of Thornton cast a shadow over their happiness. They'd heard he was traveling on business, but expected his return with the spring thaw, only weeks away. "What will we do when he returns?" Sarah asked. "We will face him together," Swift Arrow answered, though concern lined his features. "But we must be prepared. Thornton does not surrender control willingly." Their worries materialized sooner than expected. A messenger arrived from the nearest trading post with news that Thornton would return within days, accompanied by a government official to discuss new treaty terms. The announcement sent ripples of tension through the settlement. Chief Many Horses called a council meeting. Swift Arrow, as one of the tribe's most effective translators, would play a crucial role. "He will try to use our marriage against us," Swift Arrow warned Sarah as they prepared for bed that night. "Whatever he says or does, remember that what exists between us now is real. Not what he arranged, but what we built." "I won't let him come between us," Sarah promised. "There is something else you should know," Swift Arrow said, taking her hands. "Before Thornton returns, the legal papers binding our marriage, they hold no true authority here on tribal lands. The ceremony was real in the eyes of my people, but in the white man's law." He hesitated. "I doubt they were properly filed with any territorial authority. He merely needed you to believe you had no choice." The revelation left Sarah reeling. "So, I could have left at any time?" Pain flickered across Swift Arrow's features. "Yes. And now that you know this truth, you must decide if you wish to stay." Sarah's answer came without hesitation. She leaned forward and kissed him deeply. "My place is here with you. By choice, not compulsion." As they held each other that night, Sarah felt both liberation and determination. Thornton had manipulated them with lies and fear. Now, armed with truth and genuine feelings for each other, they would face whatever challenges his return might bring. 2 days later, word came that Thornton's party had been spotted approaching the valley. The entire settlement prepared for the important visit, but none with more at stake than Swift Arrow and Sarah. As they dressed that morning, Swift Arrow presented Sarah with a necklace, a small pouch on a leather cord. "This is a medicine bundle," he explained. "Inside are sacred items for protection and courage. My mother wore it. Now it belongs to you." Sarah bowed her head as he placed it around her neck. "I'll wear it with honor." "Whatever happens today," Swift Arrow said, taking her face gently between his hands, "know that you have brought light back to my life when I thought all was darkness." They walked hand in hand to the center of the settlement, ready to confront the man who forced them together, never imagining they would choose to stay that way. But Thornton had one final card to play, and it was deadlier than either of them suspected. Thornton arrived with calculated showmanship. Accompanying him was a dour government official named Richardson and 4 armed men described as security, but whose watchful eyes suggested more predatory intentions. The visitors were received in the council lodge where Chief Many Horses, Swift Arrow, and other tribal leaders awaited. Sarah sat slightly behind her husband, dressed in a blend of Western and Blackfeet clothing that reflected her evolving identity. Thornton's eyes narrowed when he spotted her, clearly surprised by her presence and apparent acceptance among the tribal leadership. He recovered quickly, launching into elaborate greetings. "Commissioner Richardson has traveled all the way from Washington to discuss new arrangements for hunting territories and trading rights," Thornton announced grandly. "I've assured him of the Blackfeet's eagerness to cooperate with these progressive measures." Swift Arrow translated accurately but without Thornton's embellishments, earning a sharp glance from the trader. Commissioner Richardson spoke at length about the government's generosity in offering protected reservation lands in exchange for larger hunting territories. Though couched in diplomatic language, the proposal would restrict the tribe to a fraction of their traditional lands. During a break in negotiations, Thornton cornered Sarah near the water barrels. "Playing the Indian princess now, are we?" he sneered. "I must say I'm surprised. I expected tears and begging to be sent home by now." "This is my home," Sarah replied evenly, "and my husband and I are quite happy with our arrangement, though not in the way you intended." Thornton's face darkened. "Don't be a fool, girl. This little adventure has been entertaining, but it's time to be realistic. These negotiations will change everything. The tribe will be moving to designated reservation lands by summer." "You're selling them out," Sarah realized aloud. "After all your promises of fair trading." "I'm a businessman," Thornton shrugged. "The future lies with progress, not dying traditions. Swift Arrow would understand that if he weren't so stubborn about clinging to his savage roots." "You don't know him at all," Sarah said coldly. Thornton leaned closer. "I made him what he is, and I can unmake him just as easily. Did he tell you about the settler he killed 6 years ago? One word from me to Commissioner Richardson about that unfortunate incident, and your precious husband will be in chains by nightfall." Sarah's blood ran cold, but she maintained her composure. "More threats, Mr. Thornton. Is that all you have?" "Not just threats," he replied smoothly. "Opportunities. Help me convince Swift Arrow to support the new treaty terms, and I'll ensure you both receive special privileges in the new arrangement. A proper house on the edge of the reservation, continued trading rights, perhaps even a teaching position for you with the Indian Agent's office." "And if we refuse?" His smile vanished. "Then I'll see Swift Arrow imprisoned for murder, and you'll find yourself truly alone on the frontier. Think carefully about your choices, my dear." Sarah returned to the council lodge with Thornton's threats weighing heavily. During the afternoon session, she noticed Swift Arrow growing increasingly tense as treaty terms were elaborated. When the day's negotiations concluded, Swift Arrow and Sarah retreated to their cabin. "The terms are worse than we feared," Swift Arrow said, pacing angrily. "They would take the best hunting grounds and confine us to rocky foothills. Our people cannot survive there." Thornton threatened to accuse you of murder if you don't support the treaty, Sarah revealed. He claims to have evidence about the settler incident. Swift Arrow stopped pacing, his expression grim. I expected as much. He sat beside Sarah, taking her hands. What he doesn't know is that I've carried that burden too long already. The man's death was an accident during a struggle after he attacked one of our hunting parties. I was defending my cousin. Can you prove it? Sarah asked. There were witnesses, but they were all Blackfeet. He shook his head. In a white man's court, our words count for nothing. They sat in silence, considering their options. Finally, Sarah spoke. What if we could undermine Thornton's credibility before he can make his accusation? That night, while the settlement slept, Sarah took an enormous risk. She crept to where Thornton and the commissioner were quartered and searched Thornton's saddlebags while he snored nearby. Her hands trembled as she extracted his leather portfolio containing negotiation documents. By dawn, she and Swift Arrow had discovered something explosive. Thornton had been falsifying translations of the tribe's positions to the commissioner, while simultaneously misrepresenting the government's offers to the tribe. More damning still, they found letters revealing Thornton had already sold hunting rights to several mining companies for lands he knew would be taken from the Blackfeet in the new treaty. He's been playing both sides all along, Swift Arrow said grimly, betraying both the government and our people for his own profit. They carefully replaced the documents and formulated a plan. When negotiations resumed the next morning, Swift Arrow requested permission to translate directly to Chief Many Horses, rather than through Thornton. The trader objected strenuously, but Commissioner Richardson, growing suspicious of the obvious tension, granted the request. For the first time, the Blackfeet leaders heard the government's actual terms, less severe than Thornton had presented, though still challenging. Similarly, Commissioner Richardson learned that several points he thought had been agreed upon had never been accurately communicated to the tribe. As confusion mounted, Sarah stepped forward. Speaking clearly and respectfully, she addressed the commissioner directly. Sir, I believe there has been deliberate misrepresentation in these negotiations. Mr. Thornton has been altering translations to serve his own interests. Thornton surged to his feet. This is outrageous. This woman has no standing here. I speak both as a white American citizen and as the wife of a respected Blackfeet translator, Sarah countered, and I have evidence of Mr. Thornton's duplicity. What followed was a careful unveiling of the truth. How Thornton had already sold hunting rights he didn't possess, how he'd manipulated both sides for personal gain, how he'd used threats and coercion to maintain control. This is a fabrication, Thornton shouted as his schemes unraveled. Commissioner, this woman is nothing but a forced bride, and her so-called husband is a murderer with white blood on his hands. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Swift Arrow stepped forward, his dignity unshaken. 6 years ago, I helped defend my hunting party when a trespassing settler attacked my cousin with a knife. In the struggle, his own weapon caused his death. I have carried that burden, but it was self-defense, not murder. To everyone's surprise, Commissioner Richardson nodded slowly. The Maxwell incident. I reviewed that file before coming here. Witnesses from a nearby missionary outpost corroborated the self-defense account. The case was closed years ago. The blood drained from Thornton's face. That's impossible. I told him. He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. You told him what, Mr. Thornton? The commissioner asked coldly. That he was guilty of a crime the government had already cleared him of? That you held power over him based on a lie? The revelation changed everything. Commissioner Richardson, though still representing government interests in acquiring territory, agreed to renegotiate terms directly with the tribal council. Thornton was placed under guard, facing charges of fraud and attempted extortion. As spring bloomed across the valley, a new agreement was reached, one that, while still requiring the Blackfeet to cede some hunting grounds, preserved their access to sacred sites and provided fair compensation. Swift Arrow played a central role in the negotiations, his unique understanding of both cultures proving invaluable. On a warm evening after the new treaty was signed, Swift Arrow led Sarah to a hillside overlooking the settlement. The valley stretched before them, golden in the setting sun. This will always be home, he said, his arm around her shoulders. Even if boundaries change on maps, this land lives in our blood. Our children will know both worlds, Sarah replied softly. They'll carry forward the best of each. Swift Arrow turned to face her, surprise and joy dawning in his expression. Children? Are you saying? Sarah nodded, placing his hand gently against her abdomen. I'm certain. By winter there will be 3 of us in our cabin. His kiss was tender, full of promise and newfound hope. When they finally parted, Swift Arrow looked out over the valley once more. Thornton thought he was forcing us together as punishment. Instead, he gave us the greatest gift without realizing it. Each other, Sarah agreed. And freedom, Swift Arrow added. Freedom to choose our own path between 2 worlds. As they made their way back to the settlement hand in hand, Sarah reflected on the strange journey that brought her here. What began as a desperate arrangement had transformed into a love strong enough to bridge cultures and overcome those who would divide them. That night, as they lay together in their cabin, Swift Arrow whispered Blackfeet words into Sarah's hair. Ancient promises of protection and devotion. Sarah responded with her own vows, spoken from the heart in a blend of English and his native tongue. Their marriage, once a mere transaction on paper, had become something far more powerful. A bond freely chosen, tested by adversity, strengthened by love. Together, they would forge a new path for themselves and their child, honoring both their heritages while creating traditions uniquely their own. As spring turned to summer, the settlement adapted to changing times. Some families chose to move to the designated reservation lands. Others, including Swift Arrow and Sarah, established a smaller community on land they'd negotiated to keep. There they built a new cabin, larger than their first, with a special room for the coming child. Mourning Dove, who chose to stay with them, often reminded Sarah of her words from that first difficult night. Sometimes the path we must walk is not the one we would choose, but every journey reveals its purpose in time. Looking at Swift Arrow as he worked in the golden light of a summer evening, his face peaceful in a way it had never been before, Sarah knew with certainty that their journey, though beginning in shadows, had led them exactly where they were meant to be. If you enjoyed this story of forced marriage turned true love, of manipulation overcome by courage, and of 2 souls finding each other across impossible divides, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. Would you have stayed in Sarah's position? Could you have forgiven Swift Arrow for his initial rejection? Drop your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next story.